Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. What a fantastic budget. And it is fantastic for all sorts of reasons. First and foremost, because I think it demonstrates how incredibly well our Chancellor and our government did through the COVID pandemic in supporting lives and livelihoods. And I think the economic forecasts that have come out that are now so much more optimistic are testament to the effort that was put in and the result that we're starting to see. Also fantastic, in my view, for the support it's giving to the leisure and hospitality sector. That's really going to help businesses in South Northamptonshire. So thank you to that, to my honourable friend on the front bench. The universal credit taper, so many people wrote to me about that. That is really going to help people who are in work and also receiving universal credit. Fantastic. And then for me as a former business secretary, the investment in R&D is superb. That is going to create the jobs and the productivity, and particularly the green jobs right across our country that we want to see. But why is this budget so particularly fantastic, Mr Deputy Speaker? Come on, everybody, babies, yes! And I just happen to be holding this. It's not a prop, it's merely something to lean on. The Best Start for Life. And I want to thank both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, the whole front bench, so many colleagues on the benches opposite, and so many colleagues on these benches for their commitment for so many years to making sure every family gets the support they need to give their baby the best start for life. And it's something that I know the Prime Minister is totally committed to, and I know that the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, also was completely clear when she asked me to chair an interministerial group looking at the early years that babies are vital. And on that interministerial group, a couple of years ago now, there were two ministers. One was Rishi Sunak, local government minister. The other was Nadhim Zahawi. Sorry, Richmond and Stratford-upon-Avon. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I should know that by now. And of course, they've gone on to fulfil such a fantastic pledge for every baby. But certainly, I also want to pay tribute to the amazing contributions from parents and carers right across England for their determination to have their voices heard and to make sure that the Best Start for Life is something that can really work for all parents and carers. And I just want to take a moment or two just to explain why this period of life is so vital. Essentially, human beings, human babies, are unique in the animal kingdom in the extent of their underdevelopment at birth. Every other animal can fend for itself pretty well from minutes or at least hours after it's born, but for human babies, they can't do anything for themselves until they're at least 1 year old, and very often up to 2 before they can really fend for themselves. So what that means is that in human babies, both their physical underdevelopment but also their brain underdevelopment means that they adapt to the environment in which they find themselves. So the baby that's born into a secure and happy home with loving family is going to grow up learning that as an instinct for life, able to do well at school, to make friends, to be able to learn, then to get a job, to hold down friendships and relationships, and then to be a good parent themselves. But conversely, the baby born into a situation where there's perhaps interparental conflict, where there might be drug or alcohol misuse, mental health problems, severe deprivation, that baby is not going to have those same life chances. And all of the research demonstrates in spades that for those babies, life is much harder. Their instinct for life is not good, and they very often go on to have all sorts of problems. I'll give way to the Right Honourable Lady.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. There was a Sure Start programme which did exactly what she's talking about. Does she now regret that that was abolished by her government and that she voted to abolish that?
I'm so glad that the Honourable Lady, who I consider a friend, gives me the chance to tackle this, because of course that is the standard response, is what about Sure Starts? And I have in this place paid tribute to the excellent efforts of so many Sure Starts and worked with honourable and right honourable members from across this House on that subject. However, Sure Starts did not provide what most families need. Sure Starts, unfortunately, the programme focused, and I can vouch for this, having led a charity that had to pay rent to provide parent-infant mental health within the walls of a Sure Start over 20 years ago. Sure Starts didn't stipulate the services for families. They were all about the buildings, and therein lies their problem. What we have now with this government's policy of family hubs is what I hope Sure Starts will build themselves into, and that is a welcoming place for every family to be able to go to find their antenatal classes, to meet with their health visitor, to meet with other parents, to get support, whether it's for smoking cessation or mental health or breastfeeding advice and so on. Multidisciplinary services under one roof, and not just physically but also virtually. One of the things we learnt during lockdown was the incredible value that parents have placed on being able to take part in something remotely, whether it's breastfeeding support or perhaps dad's mental health support. These things can very well be provided in a 21st century digital age, online and remotely, so that if your baby is crying, won't sleep in the middle of the night, you can actually look at something online rather than waiting for your Sure Start, which unfortunately in so many cases might only be open for a few hours a week. And also I must just take the Honourable Lady to task, because there are 3,000 Sure Starts in England as we speak, and what it is my hope is that local authority areas will use that foundation of Sure Starts to build on them, to create the family hub model that the government is now putting forward. But I do want to just move on to some of the other action areas in the vision for the 1001 Critical Days. And I'm delighted that the Chancellor has announced funding for every local authority area to publish their own Start for Life offer, because one of the critical things that parents and carers said to us in the early years review is that they just don't know what they need, let alone how to access it if they do know what they need. So if you are pregnant for the first time, why would you know that you might need smoking cessation, breastfeeding, weaning, oral decay help with brushing your baby's teeth, or whether it might be debt advice or nursery advice and so on? When you first find out, hopefully but not always, the fantastic news that you're expecting a baby, you don't know where to go. And so actually local authority areas publishing and offering to parents that range of Start for Life services is going to be quite transformational. And then I think the third measure that the Chancellor is offering money for today is for a digital version of the Red Book. Now, so many of us, we've got these plastic Red Books with bits of paper falling out of them. We forget to take them to the health visitor meetings and to the immunisations, so the record is incomplete. And sadly, speaking in the research phase to so many foster carers, including some fabulous people who'd fostered 40 babies between them, only 2 of those babies turned up with a Red Book. So for those foster carers, they knew nothing about what had happened to that baby, what was the baby's birth experience, what was the situation with the birth parents. No information at all, and that has to stop. So actually, again, in this digital age, a digital version of the Red Book is going to be quite a game changer for every family. Not just for families to see what happened, when did I wean my first baby, when do I need to meet the health visitor again, or whatever it might be, but also for early years professionals, because so often parents say, I've had to tell my story 6 times this week to 6 different people. Why don't you ever talk to each other? And we also know that when there's a serious case review, all too often it's these people didn't speak to those people, this team didn't know what that team was doing, and so on. So actually joining up the services in the Start for Life, the period from conception to the age of 2, is the big win, in my opinion, from today's budget. And I think it's going to be transformational for so many millions of babies across England. And so the next steps, of course, is going to be the implementation. It's not done until it's done. And I want to thank so many colleagues, so many professionals in the early years sector, and so many ministers, current and past, for that extraordinary coming together of views that meant that today is just the biggest win for families. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.